Hi, welcome back, and today what we're going to be talking about is safety regarding a stick welder. Now, for today what we're going to be talking about is just your basic setup and safety, both attire and procedure when it comes to use of a stick welder. Okay. Now, in order to start up your welder here, it's very straightforward, simple flip of a switch. Much like that of a light switch. Okay, flipping up to turn it on, flipping down to turn it off. We have here our crank dial in order to set up our amperage, and then we have our switch for electrode polarity, whether it be DC straight, DC reverse, or alternating current. Now, I'm not going to go over today what amperage goes to what electrode. This is just going to be primarily how I go about setting this up and proper attire. I will go over this. When it comes to our setup here, we have our ground that can be set up to either the work table or the work itself. In this case, we just use this for common practice in our welding booth. So our grounds are going to be hooked up, clamped to our work table. We have here our electrode holder, also known as a stinger. The electrode holder is going to clamp down onto our electrode, much like that of, think of a clothespin, okay? Don't confuse this little clamp here for being like a button, much like a trigger that you would find on a MIG welder. It doesn't function like that. This little clamp here just locks down the teeth right onto your electrode in order for you to weld, okay? So don't confuse this little handle here for that of a MIG welder. Some attire to get acquainted with when you're doing your stick welding. We have here your welding jacket that you'd use for covering up arms. The real important thing is that you're not exposing any kind of skin when you're doing your stick welding. This is a very bright light, much like that of as if you're to be going outside, similar to a sunburn, except you're not millions of miles away from the sun. That bright light is right there in front of you, okay? So it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of inches. One single pass can be able to do damage to exposed skin from that bright light. The real important thing is covering up. So, leather jacket in order to cover up arms. Work pants in order to cover up legs. There are no gym shorts when it comes to working in a weld booth. You have to be able to cover up. So work pants. If not work pants, coveralls, okay? Coveralls in order to cover up arms, legs, and leather gauntlet gloves. I emphasize leather gauntlet gloves because our leather gauntlet gloves are so long that it can be able to cover up forearms in addition to our hands, okay? They're very sturdy, very strong, thick in order to protect against sparks, let alone the bright light that comes off of the arc. And then we have here our shade 10 welding helmet. Emphasis on shade 10. The shade 10 is important because of that bright light. I always have students that would have that smart remark of, if I have a shade 5 plus another shade 5 over that other shade 5 plus shade 5 equals shade 10. That doesn't do the trick, okay? Still what you're doing is you're exposing skin to that bright light. Yeah, sure, I could do simple math by having shade 5 plus shade 5 equals a shade 10, but I'm still exposing skin to that bright light because you're going to be so far away from that bright light in order to get that arc flash. Cover up by having a shade 10 helmet. And in addition to having that shade 10 helmet, you have to have safety glasses on underneath. With stick welding, there are tons of sparks coming off of that weld. Those sparks will get everywhere, including underneath that helmet. Do yourself a solid and protect your eyes in addition to having that helmet on by having safety glasses on as well. So as far as proper attire from our leather helmet, work pants, closed-toed shoes in fact, leather gauntlet gloves, and shade 10 helmet, You also have some tools that you need to have on hand when you're going about welding any kind of metal with a stick welder. For a class like my Ag Mechanics 2, we may be doing some proficiencies, butt welds, slack welds, T-welds. I advise having on hand pliers. Never handle hot metal with bare hands, let alone your welding gloves. This is hot metal we're talking about. Don't be foolish by handling metal with your hands. Have on hand a pair of pliers or vice grips in order for you to dip the hot metal into a dunk tank. When you dip your metal into a dunk tank, it's got to be immediate. Don't admire the bubbles. Don't admire the steam and the boiling of the water as you dip the hot metal into the dunk tank. That hot water will splash getting onto skin, if not a face, if you're close enough, into that water. There's a lot of splashing involved. To eliminate that chance of any hot water splashing on you, dip the metal quickly into the dunk tank. Also have on hand a chipping hammer and wire brush. Chipping hammer and wire brush allows you to clean off your material, your weld, after you are done completing your stick weld. Also, I need to mention this, do not clean off your metal in your booth. It's more for you to have to clean up at the end. Make it easier on yourself. We have a chip table available for you in order to clean off your welds and put your deposits, your slag, into the chip table. So make it easier for yourself at the end of the class period by not cleaning off your slag in your booth. Use a chip table. Also, while we're on the topic of maintaining a clean booth, let's get on the subject of electrode stubs. With every single weld that you're going to be making with a stick welder, you're going to have little electrode stubs, like that I have in my hand. Short stubs, okay? Throw them away. Do not leave them in the booth, and don't just leave them on the ground. This becomes a trip hazard, okay? By stepping on these electrodes, they're relatively strong, and so it's going to cause you to be able to have a slip when it comes to stepping on these electrodes. Don't run the risk of putting yourself in danger and your peers. Take the electrodes, throw them away. Don't leave them in the booth, and don't leave them on the ground. What if you have electrodes left over? So if you have a length of electrode left over at the end of the class period, put it back in the box or put it back in the electrode hub. Either way, the electrodes that are unused are not left in the booth. Don't leave a mess. Clean up be courteous not only to those that are going to be taking the class later on in the day, but put away your electrodes that are unused. So keep a clean booth. Have the appropriate safety attire and follow the safety procedures when it comes to maintaining a safe work environment while welding, cooling off your metal, and constantly keeping a clean atmosphere. Have the appropriate attire on. And also, if you're looking to supply with your own safety glasses, gloves, or even coveralls, you're welcome to have a locker in order to keep it in place. So, all in all, it's a fun subject to be teaching and a fun subject to be taking. But also, there are protocols in order to follow in maintaining a safe and fun atmosphere while stick welding.